Hi everyone, Thao here. So there's no question about it, the iPad mini 6 is easily the best small tablet that you can buy right now. But the real question is, are small tablets even worth it these days? Let's talk about it. Usually when you think of a tablet, you think of a nice, big, beautiful screen. Well, the iPad mini 6 kind of goes against that. The original iPad mini that came out in 2012 was actually my very first iPad, and I loved that thing. But back then, phones were also a lot smaller. So I feel like a tablet this size today doesn't have the same appeal as it did back then. Over the years, I've gravitated towards larger tablets, but when Apple announced this, I figured it'd be cool to try out a small iPad again. This new iPad mini is just as light, just as portable, and I can still palm it with one hand, which is why I love the original so much. I was a little thrown off by the aspect ratio at first, but then I realized they likely did this to make sure most people, even people like me with tiny hands, can grip it like this. It now has an 8.3-inch LCD display with a more modern design and nice even bezels all around. I mean, the screen's decent, but if I'm being real, it isn't all that impressive. It's 60 Hz, and when scrolling through content, there's a very noticeable wobble. Well, for me at least. If you've used any other 120 Hz display or an iPad with Pro Motion, going back to the 60 Hz display can be jarring. It took me a couple of days to not see the jitter when scrolling. I would have loved more of an upgrade to the display, but in general, it's fine. I'm probably just being overly nitpicky. Looking at this, you would think that there are a total of 4 speakers, but there's actually only 2, located here and here. The speakers themselves actually sound pretty good considering that the device is so small. At first, I thought the top speaker cutouts were just there for aesthetic reasons, but it's actually kind of clever what they did. Let's say you hold the iPad like this and like this, which is pretty common, right? You're completely covering the speakers, and you'd expect the audio to come out as a muffled mess, but it doesn't. Turns out, the sound ends up getting pushed out through those fake speaker cutouts. It doesn't sound as good, but still, a very clever solution to a potential problem. The Mini 6 now supports the 2nd generation Apple Pencil that attaches magnetically to the side for charging. To make room, they had to move the volume buttons to the top, across from the power button, which now also doubles as a fingerprint scanner. It's a really good one too. No Face ID here, but I personally prefer Touch ID on my iPad anyways. The size of the iPad mini 6 makes this a great on-the-go note-taking or art device. The plastic on glass feel isn't my favorite because it's a little slippery, but like anything, I can adapt to it. The mini is big enough where I can still comfortably take notes, but not too big where it gets uncomfortable to handle with one hand. Is it the best note-taking experience? That depends on you. If you're going to be mainly at a desk, I feel like one of the larger iPads would make more sense since you get extra writing space. Plus, the size or weight won't really matter, right? If you plan on being mobile, don't underestimate how big of a difference the smaller size and weight can make. This would make a great sidekick for someone who signs and fills a lot of documents or needs a sketch pad while on the go. One tiny complaint I have is because this has a flat edge design, it's a little harder to pick up off of flat surfaces with one hand. Like, you'll definitely need two. But overall, as a portable note-taking device, I'm really digging it. Another natural use case for a tablet this size would be as an e-reader. While I do have a dedicated e-ink reader, which I highly recommend if you're an avid reader, the iPad mini 6 would probably be the better buy for most people when you consider how much more you can do with it. It gets the job done, and with dark mode, the screen hasn't been as tough on my eyes as I thought it would be. Out the box, it's running iPadOS 15, and it's very similar to the experience you'd get on any other iPad, except I have no idea why there's so much wasted space on either side of the home screen. It just feels like they could have spaced things out a little to take up some of this empty space. Another thing is, not every app has been updated to fit the unique aspect ratio. I know developers will eventually get to it, But the biggest standout for me right now is Netflix. You have these black bars on either side, so content doesn't even utilize the entire screen properly. Apple put a lot of focus on the multitasking experience with iPadOS 15, and I have to admit, I'm a really big fan of the update. The Mini has all the same multitasking as other iPads, except you're working with a smaller screen. Because it has a taller aspect ratio, I really wish Apple would let you run split screen with 2 apps stacked on top of each other, rather than side by side like this. Coming from the M1 iPad Pro, I think the biggest compliment I can give the iPad mini is that it's handled pretty much everything I've thrown at it and hasn't skipped a beat. For how I use these tablets, the performance is so similar. This has Apple's A15 Bionic chip, and although it's probably overkill for most people, if you want to edit 4K videos or do a lot of graphically intense gaming, it will easily get the job done. I don't see myself doing a ton of video editing on this, but knowing I can grade, chop, and render a quick video whenever I need to is great. Okay, so I just threw a bunch of 4K clips into LumaFusion. For such a tiny device, look at how smooth it scrubs through the video. Like, this is pretty insane. I was so impressed. Here, I'll press play. And check out how effortlessly it plays the footage. I even have 3 4K video clips stacked on top of each other, and check this out. It plays it with no problem. And now that it has a USB-C port, I can edit directly off my hard drive or transfer footage straight from my camera, which is so crazy. Photo editing and creating thumbnails using Affinity Photo is another one of my favorite uses for the iPad Pro. The Mini performs just as great in a smaller, more portable footprint. The bottom line is, you aren't sacrificing much performance for the smaller size. The 64 gigs of starting storage kind of sucks and will easily get filled up really fast. So if you plan on filming with the upgraded cameras or using this for any sort of content creation, I would go with the higher storage option. Battery life is fine. For the most part, I'm charging the tablet every other day. If you do a lot of intense stuff like video editing or gaming, the battery drains much quicker. Like with most Apple products, standby battery drain is amazing. I could not use the tablet for a whole day, come back to it, and it would have only drained like 1 or 2%. I don't know how they do it. It's crazy to me. Alright, so while I would have loved a much nicer screen, what I really appreciate about the new iPad mini is just how capable it is. There's really no other tablet out there that packs this much power in such a small and cute form factor. There's definitely a market for a small, powerful tablet, and right now, Apple's the only one offering one. Alright, I have baby hands, and seriously, does this not look like a regular sized tablet in my hand? For contrast, here's what the 12.9-inch iPad Pro looks like. I know, right? It's freaking massive. Yeah, for that reason, this pretty much lives on my desk. The iPad Mini 6 isn't cheap though, especially once you factor in the Apple Pencil. The main selling point here is the weight and size. So you just really need to ask yourself, how important is portability to you? Anyways, I hope you found this helpful. As usual, thank you so much for watching. Until the next one, I'm out of here.